The sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Chisum Ranch, New Mexico territory. As Olivia Reed stumbled from the stagecoach, her threadbare dress catching on the splintered wooden step. It was 1873, and the last of her hopes had been spent on this one-way ticket to a town she'd never seen, fleeing a past that refused to release its grip on her heart. "Watch yourself, miss," the driver called down gruffly, already tossing her single battered carpetbag to the ground. End of the line. Olivia winced as the bag hit the dirt, sending up a small cloud of dust. 23 years old and completely alone, she had nowhere to go and barely $2 to her name. Her aunt's letter had promised work at the town's only hotel, but the grim faces that greeted her arrival suggested Chisum Ranch wasn't the haven she'd desperately prayed for. She brushed the travel dust from her skirt and straightened her back. If there was one thing Olivia knew, it was how to endure. Orphaned at 12, raised by a series of uncaring relatives, and eventually forced to marry a man who saw her as property rather than a person, she had mastered the art of survival. The stagecoach pulled away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the street. A group of men outside the saloon paused their conversation to stare openly at her. Olivia clutched her bag tighter and headed toward what appeared to be the hotel, a 2-story building with a faded sign promising clean beds and hot meals. "You must be Agatha's niece," said a thin-lipped woman behind the counter. "I'm Mrs. Porter. Your aunt mentioned you'd be coming, but I'm afraid she's no longer with us." Olivia's heart sank. "No longer. Past 3 weeks ago. Influenza." Mrs. Porter's voice held no sympathy. "I kept the position open out of respect, but I expect hard work. Rooms upstairs, last door on the left. You'll start tomorrow at dawn." Before Olivia could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Through the window, she saw a group of cowboys riding into town, dust billowing around them as they dismounted in front of the saloon across the street. Among them was a tall man whose presence seemed to command attention without effort. Unlike his companions who immediately headed for the saloon doors, he paused, scanning the street with a watchfulness that spoke of natural authority. "That's the Diamond O'Boys, Mrs. Porter said, following Olivia's gaze. "Biggest ranch in the territory. The tall one's Dawson O'Malley, foreman." Olivia watched as Dawson O'Malley tied his horse to the hitching post. He removed his hat briefly to wipe his brow, revealing sun-streaked brown hair before replacing it low over his eyes. Something about the careful way he moved, the respectful nods he gave to the townspeople, made her stare a moment longer than was proper. "Best get settled, Mrs. Porter snapped, breaking the spell. "Dawn comes early in Chisum Ranch." The room was barely large enough for the narrow bed and washstand it contained. Olivia set her bag down and sank onto the thin mattress, allowing herself one moment of despair before pushing it aside. She had survived worse. She would survive this too. Dawn indeed came early, and with it, Olivia's new life of endless work. She served meals in the dining room, cleaned rooms, washed linens, and fell into bed each night with aching muscles and raw hands. Days blended into weeks as summer heat gave way to autumn's chill. She kept to herself, avoiding the curious stares of the townspeople and the unwelcome attention of certain male hotel guests. Her days had a numbing sameness that was, in its own way, a comfort after the chaos she'd fled. It was nearly 2 months after her arrival when she encountered Dawson O'Malley up close. She was carrying a heavy basket of linens across the hotel lobby when the door swung open, bringing with it a blast of cold October air and the Diamond O'Foreman. Olivia stumbled, the basket tipping precariously. Strong hands steadied both her and her burden. "Careful there," came a deep voice, surprisingly gentle for a man of his size. "Thank you," she murmured, not meeting his eyes as she adjusted her grip on the basket. "You're new to town," he said. It wasn't a question. "Dawson O'Malley, Diamond O' Ranch, Olivia Reed," she replied, risking a glance up. His eyes were a startling shade of green against his sun-darkened skin. "I work here. Pleased to meet you, Miss Reed." He tipped his hat with a courtesy that seemed out of place in the rough frontier town. Mrs. Porter's sharp call from the dining room saved Olivia from further conversation. With a nod, she hurried away, feeling his gaze follow her. Over the next few weeks, Dawson O'Malley became a regular presence at the hotel dining room. He took his meals there whenever he was in town, always requesting Olivia's section if she was serving. His manner remained unfailingly polite, never overstepping boundaries or making improper suggestions like some of the other men who passed through Chisum Ranch. "You don't talk much about yourself," he commented one evening as she refilled his coffee cup. "Not much to tell," she replied automatically. "Somehow I doubt that," he said with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Everyone has a story." "Some stories aren't worth telling, Mr. O'Malley." "Dawson," he corrected gently, "and I'd wager yours is worth more than you think." She moved away without responding, but his words stayed with her. No one had ever shown interest in her story before. No one had ever really seen her at all. The first snow fell in late November, turning Chisum Ranch into a frigid outpost. The hotel's poorly insulated walls did little to keep out the biting cold. Olivia worked with numb fingers, wrapping herself in every layer she owned. It was during this bitter cold snap that disaster struck. Returning to her room after an exhausting day, Olivia found water pouring through her ceiling from a burst pipe above. Everything she owned was soaked, including the thin mattress where she slept. Mrs. Porter was unsympathetic. "No other rooms available. You'll have to make do in the storage closet downstairs until it's repaired." The storage closet was little more than a windowless cubby off the kitchen, barely large enough for a cot. That night, Olivia curled under her damp blankets, shivering violently as tears of exhaustion and frustration slipped silently down her cheeks. By morning, she was burning with fever. "Can't have you infecting the guests," Mrs. Porter declared, backing away from Olivia's flushed face. "You'll need to find somewhere else until you're well. Please," Olivia whispered, her throat raw. "I have nowhere to go." "Not my concern," the woman replied coldly. "You haven't been here long enough to be worth the trouble." Dazed with fever, Olivia stumbled out into the snow. The town swam before her eyes as she made her way unsteadily down the street, unsure where she was heading. The only clear thought in her mind was that she couldn't show weakness. Weakness had always been exploited by those around her. She was barely aware of collapsing until strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Miss Reed, Olivia." The concerned voice seemed to come from far away. Through the haze of fever, she recognized Dawson O'Malley's face hovering above hers, brow furrowed with concern. "I'm fine," she tried to say, but the words slurred together as darkness claimed her. She drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of movement, warmth, and gentle hands. When she finally woke fully, she was in an unfamiliar room, lying in a comfortable bed beneath several thick quilts. A fire crackled in a stone hearth nearby. "Welcome back," said a female voice. Olivia turned to find a silver-haired woman sitting in a rocking chair beside the bed, knitting needles clicking softly in her weathered hands. "Where am I?" Olivia asked, her voice a raspy whisper. "Diamond O' Ranch," the woman replied. "I'm Martha Owen's housekeeper. Dawson brought you in 3 days ago, half frozen and burning with fever. Doctor says it's pneumonia, but you're past the worst of it now. 3 days." Olivia tried to sit up but fell back against the pillows, too weak to manage it. "Easy now," Martha cautioned. "You need rest." She poured water from a pitcher and held the glass to Olivia's lips. "Dawson found you collapsed in the street, said Mrs. Porter had put you out because you were sick." Shame washed over Olivia. "I don't want to be a burden." Martha's eyes sharpened. "Burden, child, being ill isn't a burden, it's part of life. And the way that woman treated you was nothing short of criminal." Before Olivia could respond, the door opened and Dawson entered, carrying a tray with a steaming bowl. He stopped short when he saw she was awake, relief washing over his features. "You had us worried," he said, setting the tray down on the bedside table. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Olivia said, though her body ached and her chest felt tight. "Thank you for your kindness, but I should return to town as soon as possible." Dawson exchanged a look with Martha, who stood with a shake of her head. "I'll leave you two to talk," the older woman said, patting Olivia's hand before departing. Dawson took the vacated chair, leaning forward with his forearms on his knees. "You're not going back to that hotel," he said firmly. "I have nowhere else," Olivia admitted. "You do now." He gestured to the room around them. "Martha could use help around the house, especially with winter setting in. It's honest work, better conditions, and you'll have your own room in the main house." Olivia stared at him, looking for the catch, the hidden motive behind the offer. Men didn't help women without expecting something in return. That had been the harsh lesson of her life. As if reading her thoughts, Dawson's expression softened. "No strings attached, Miss Reed, just one human being helping another." "Why?" she whispered. "Because everyone deserves kindness," he said simply. "Will you at least consider it?" Too exhausted to argue and too practical to refuse shelter in the middle of winter, Olivia nodded. "Until I'm well enough to find something else." Dawson smiled, the warmth of it reaching his eyes. "Fair enough." Recovery came slowly. Each day, Olivia grew a little stronger under Martha's careful nursing and hearty cooking. The housekeeper was a widow who had worked for the Diamond O for over 20 years, running the main house with efficient warmth. She treated Olivia with a motherly concern that was entirely foreign to the younger woman. When Olivia was finally strong enough to leave her room, she discovered that the main house was a sprawling ranch home that served as the headquarters for one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. Dawson, she learned, wasn't just the foreman but had been raised by the owner, an aging cattleman named Harold Owens, Martha's brother-in-law, who had no children of his own. Harold found him half-starved on a failed homestead when he was just a boy, Martha explained as she showed Olivia around the house. Parents both dead from fever, raised him like a son, taught him everything about ranching. Now Harold's health is failing and Dawson runs most things. Olivia absorbed this information silently. It explained the quiet authority Dawson carried, the respect he commanded from the ranch hands, and his unexpected kindness toward a stranger in need. He knew what it was to be alone and desperate. As December deepened, Olivia gradually took on household duties, determined to earn her keep. She helped Martha with cooking, cleaning, and mending for the ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse. The work was hard but satisfying, so different from the thankless drudgery of the hotel. She saw Dawson daily, usually at meals or when he came in from working with the cattle. He never pressed her for information about her past, never made her uncomfortable with unwanted attention. Instead, he treated her with a respect she'd never experienced from a man before. One evening, as a blizzard howled outside, Olivia sat before the fire in the main living room, darning socks. Most of the hands had gone to their quarters early, leaving the house quiet except for the crackling of flames and the wind's mournful wail. Footsteps made her look up to find Dawson entering, carrying 2 steaming mugs, hot chocolate, he explained, offering one to her. "Martha's special recipe." "Thank you," she said, accepting it gratefully. He settled into the chair opposite hers, stretching his long legs toward the fire. For a while they sat in companionable silence, listening to the storm. "You've been here almost a month," he said finally. "How are you finding it?" "It's peaceful," she replied honestly. "I've never stayed anywhere this long that felt safe." Something flickered in his eyes at her words. "Were you running from something when you came to Chisum Ranch?" Olivia's hand stilled on her mending. The question wasn't intrusive, merely concerned, but it brushed against wounds still raw. "Someone," she corrected softly. "My husband." Dawson's expression remained carefully neutral. "I didn't realize you were married." "I'm not anymore." She took a deep breath. "He died. That's why I could leave." Understanding dawned on his face. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question, and Olivia didn't treat it as one. She simply nodded, eyes fixed on the fire. "I was 17 when my uncle arranged the marriage," she found herself saying. "Thomas Reed was 45, a successful businessman in St. Louis. I had no say in the matter." The words came haltingly at first, then in a rush as if a dam had broken. "He was cruel. Not just with his fists, but with his words, his control. 5 years of living in fear, never knowing what might trigger his rage." Dawson's hands tightened around his mug, but he remained silent, giving her space to continue. "When cholera took him last spring, I felt nothing but relief," she admitted. "I waited until the funeral was over, took what little money I could find, and ran before his brother could claim me or the house. I had an aunt here in New Mexico territory. I thought." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter what I thought. It matters," Dawson said quietly. "Your thoughts, your feelings, they matter, Olivia." The use of her first name, spoken with such gentle insistence, brought tears to her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "No one has ever told me that before," she whispered. "Then they were wrong." His voice was low and fierce. "And I'm sorry for what you've endured." Olivia looked up, meeting his gaze directly for perhaps the first time. "I've never been treated kindly," she admitted, the words catching in her throat. Dawson set his mug down and leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "That changes today," he said with quiet certainty. "And every day forward, if you'll allow it." Something fragile and new unfurled in Olivia's chest, not quite hope, but perhaps its precursor. She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. The days that followed brought subtle shifts in their interactions. Dawson sought her company more often, sharing stories of the ranch and his childhood while carefully drawing out hers. Olivia found herself looking forward to their conversations. The easy way he listened without judgment, the respect with which he treated her opinions. Christmas approached, bringing with it preparations that transformed the ranch house. Martha directed the hanging of evergreen boughs and red ribbons with the precision of a general, while Harold, a gruff man with a surprisingly soft heart, insisted on cutting a towering pine to serve as their Christmas tree. "First Christmas in 10 years, we've had a woman young enough to appreciate such things properly," the old rancher declared when Olivia expressed surprise at the effort. "Martha deserves the help, and you deserve some joy, girl." On Christmas Eve, with the house decorated and a feast prepared, Olivia found herself wearing a new dress, a gift from Martha, who had secretly taken her measurements and ordered it from a dressmaker in Santa Fe. The deep blue wool was the finest garment she'd owned since fleeing her husband's house. "You look beautiful," Dawson said when she entered the dining room, his eyes warm with admiration. The compliment brought heat to her cheeks, but not the fear such words had once triggered. There was nothing possessive in his gaze, only genuine appreciation. Dinner was a lively affair, with the ranch hands joining them in the main house. Stories flowed with the wine, laughter echoing in the warm room as men who faced hardship daily allowed themselves this moment of celebration. Olivia found herself drawn into their camaraderie, answering good-natured questions about back east and offering her own observations about New Mexico territory. Later, as the hands returned to their quarters and Harold retired to his room with a nightcap, Olivia helped Martha clear the table. "He watches you, you know," Martha said quietly, nodding toward Dawson, who was stoking the fire in the living room. "I know," Olivia replied, her hand stilling on the dishes. "Does it frighten you?" There was no judgment in Martha's tone, only concern. Olivia considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally, surprised at the truth of it. "It doesn't." Martha smiled, patting her hand. "Good. He's a good man, that one. Best I've known besides my Henry, God rest him. Dawson doesn't give his heart easily, but when he does, it's for keeps." Before Olivia could formulate a response, Martha shooed her away from the dishes. "Go on. It's Christmas Eve. Old women like me need our rest, but you young folks should enjoy the fire a while longer." In the living room, Dawson had settled on the sofa, the firelight playing across his features. He looked up as she entered, his smile genuine. "Martha chased you out too?" he asked. "She's determined to do the last of the cleaning herself," Olivia confirmed, sitting beside him with a careful distance between them. "That's Martha, stubborn as they come." His fond tone spoke of years of familial affection. He reached beside the sofa and produced a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. "I have something for you, for Christmas." Olivia took it hesitantly. "I didn't get you anything." "Your company is gift enough," he assured her. "Open it." She untied the twine carefully and folded back the paper to reveal a small leather-bound book. Opening it, she found blank pages of high-quality paper. "A journal," Dawson explained. "I thought." "Well, you mentioned once that you used to enjoy writing as a girl, before your uncle forbade it. I thought perhaps you might like to start again." Emotion welled in her throat. She had indeed mentioned it once in passing during one of their evening conversations. The fact that he had remembered, had thought about what might bring her joy, was overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed, running her fingers over the soft leather cover. "This is the most thoughtful gift I've ever received." His smile deepened. "There's something else. Look inside the back cover." She turned to the back of the journal and found a small key taped to the inside cover. "It's to your bedroom door," he said quietly. "I had a locksmith in Santa Fe make it when I was there last week. I noticed there wasn't one, and I thought you might sleep easier knowing you could lock your door." Olivia stared at the key, understanding the profound meaning behind this simple object. He was giving her control, security, the choice of who could enter her space. In all her years of marriage, she had never had a door her husband couldn't open at will. Without thinking, she reached for Dawson's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to express the depth of her gratitude. His fingers closed gently around hers. "Everyone deserves to feel safe, Olivia." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined, the fire crackling beside them. When he finally released her hand, it was with visible reluctance. "I should let you rest," he said, standing. "Merry Christmas, Olivia." "Merry Christmas, Dawson." That night, for the first time since arriving at the Diamond O, Olivia locked her bedroom door. Not out of fear, but because she could. The choice was hers. As she slipped into bed, journal clutched to her chest, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Winter yielded slowly to spring, snow giving way to mud, and then to the first tender shoots of green across the ranch's vast acreage. With the changing season came new rhythms to life at the Diamond O, cattle to be moved to fresh pasture, fences to be mended, and preparations for the year's first drive to the railhead at Las Vegas, New Mexico. Olivia's position in the household had solidified. No longer a convalescent guest, she worked alongside Martha as a valued member of the ranch's small domestic staff. Her health had returned fully, bringing with it a vitality she'd forgotten she possessed. Regular meals, physical work, and the absence of constant fear had restored not just her body but something of her spirit as well. Her relationship with Dawson evolved with similar measured steps. Their evening conversations continued, deepening in intimacy though always maintaining a respectful boundary. He never pressed for more than she offered freely, seeming content with her growing trust and friendship. But there were moments, a lingering glance, the brush of his hand against hers when passing the salt at dinner, the way his voice softened when speaking her name that suggested his feelings ran deeper than friendship. Moments that caused an unfamiliar flutter in her chest, a warmth she'd never experienced with any man before. In early April, Dawson found her in the kitchen garden, turning soil for the spring planting. He watched her work for a moment before speaking. "I'm riding into town today," he said. "Thought you might like to come along. Martha mentioned you needed things from the mercantile." Olivia hadn't returned to Chisum Ranch since the day he'd found her collapsed in the street. The prospect was daunting, but she nodded. "I'd appreciate that." An hour later, they rode side by side down the main street of the small town. Olivia on a gentle mare, Dawson had personally selected from the ranch stock and taught her to ride during the winter months. She felt the curious stares of townspeople as they passed, heard the whispers that followed in their wake. "Ignore them," Dawson said quietly. "Small towns run on gossip." "What are they saying?" she asked, though she could guess. "Nothing worth repeating," he replied firmly. "And nothing that reflects the truth of who you are." They dismounted in front of Jensen's mercantile. Before they could enter, a sharp voice called out, "Well, if it isn't the hotel girl risen above her station." Mrs. Porter stood on the boardwalk, her thin mouth pinched in disapproval. Olivia tensed, but Dawson's steady presence beside her gave her courage. "Good morning, Mrs. Porter," she said evenly. "I see you landed on your feet," the older woman sniffed. "Some would call that calculating." "And some would call turning out a sick woman in winter cruel," Dawson interjected, his tone conversational but with a steely undertone that made Mrs. Porter step back slightly. "Especially when that woman was in your employ and fell ill due to the poor conditions you provided." Mrs. Porter's face flushed. "I run a respectable establishment. I couldn't have. You could have shown basic human decency," Dawson cut her off. "But that's between you and your conscience, madam. Come on, Olivia." He placed a gentle hand at the small of her back, guiding her into the mercantile and away from the sputtering hotel keeper. Inside, Mr. Jensen greeted them warmly, showing none of Mrs. Porter's judgment. As they gathered the supplies Martha had requested, other townspeople entered. Some nodded politely. Others seemed unsure how to react to Olivia's changed circumstances. While Dawson discussed an order of fence posts with Jensen, Olivia browsed the fabric section. A flash of green caught her eye, a bolt of soft cotton in a shade that reminded her of new spring leaves, or Dawson's eyes in certain light. "That would suit you," came a female voice beside her. Olivia turned to find a well-dressed woman in her 30s smiling at her. "I'm Clara Williams, the doctor's wife," the woman introduced herself. "You must be Miss Reed from the Diamond. Oh, I've heard about you." Olivia tensed, waiting for judgment. "My husband was impressed by your recovery," Clara continued, surprising her. "He said you have remarkable strength." "Your husband treated me?" Olivia asked, remembering little of those fever-filled days. "Yes, several times during your illness." Clara's smile turned conspiratorial. He also mentioned that Dawson O'Malley hardly left your side those first 2 nights despite having a ranch to run. That tells me something about both of you. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. Mr. O'Malley is a kind employer. Is that all he is? Clara asked gently. Before Olivia could respond, she continued, Forgive my forwardness. It's just that Dawson has been alone too long and the way he looks at you. She shook her head. Well, it's not my place, but if you'd like a friend in town, our door is always open. With that, Clara excused herself, leaving Olivia thoughtful. She hadn't considered how others might perceive her relationship with Dawson, or indeed, how to define it herself. Their business concluded, they rode back to the ranch in companionable silence. As they crested the final hill overlooking the Diamond O, Dawson reined his horse to a stop. Olivia followed suit, looking questioningly at him. I want to show you something, he said, gesturing toward a distant part of the property she hadn't yet seen. If you're not too tired, I'd like that, she replied. They rode for another 20 minutes, following a stream that wound through the property until they reached a small valley nestled between protective hills. A stand of cottonwoods bordered the stream here, their new leaves shimmering silver green in the afternoon light. Wildflowers dotted the lush grass, and the air was filled with the sound of birdsong and flowing water. It's beautiful, Olivia breathed as they dismounted. My favorite place on the ranch, Dawson said, leading the horses to drink from the stream. I used to come here as a boy when things got overwhelming, later during the war. He trailed off, his expression distant. I thought about this place every day I was gone, promised myself I'd come back to it. Olivia knew he'd fought for the Union, returning with a bullet scar in his left shoulder and nightmares he rarely spoke of. This glimpse into what had sustained him during that dark time felt intensely personal. Thank you for sharing it with me, she said softly. He turned to her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. Olivia, there's something I need to say. Her heart quickened at his tone. Yes, these past months, having you at the ranch, getting to know you. He took a deep breath. You've become important to me. Very important. Dawson, he held up a hand. Please let me finish. I know your past experiences with men have been painful. I know trust doesn't come easily to you, and I respect that. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just wanted you to know that my feelings for you have grown into something much deeper than friendship or concern. Olivia stood very still, absorbing his words. Fear and hope warred within her chest. I don't know what to say, she admitted finally. You don't have to say anything, he assured her. I didn't bring you here to press you for a response. I just wanted you to know where I stand. Whatever you feel, however long it takes you to know your own heart, I'll respect that. The sincerity in his voice, the patience in his eyes, these were so different from anything she had known before. Thomas had never asked what she wanted, had never considered her feelings at all. I care for you too, she said slowly, but I'm afraid. Of me. The question held no accusation, only a desire to understand. No, she realized with surprise. Not of you, of feeling this way, of trusting it. Every time I've been vulnerable before, it's been used against me. Dawson nodded, keeping a respectful distance between them, though she could see it cost him effort. I understand, and I'll wait, Olivia, however long it takes. Just know that my feelings won't change. As they rode back to the ranch, Olivia felt something shift inside her. Not a dramatic transformation, but a small, significant opening like a flower turning toward the sun after a long winter. The cattle drive to Las Vegas took Dawson, and most of the hands away from the ranch for nearly 3 weeks in late April. In his absence, Olivia found herself missing his presence with an intensity that surprised her. She filled her days with work cooking with Martha, tending the kitchen garden, helping Harold with the ranch accounts when his arthritis made writing difficult. In the evenings, she wrote in the journal Dawson had given her, filling pages with memories, fears, and gradually, hopes for a future she was beginning to believe might hold joy. She wrote about her growing feelings for Dawson, attempting to untangle the complex knot of emotions he inspired. When the telegram arrived announcing the drive's successful completion and their imminent return, Olivia found herself counting the hours. Martha noticed her anticipation and smiled knowingly, but said nothing. The hands returned in high spirits, the drive having fetched excellent prices for the Diamond O cattle. Harold opened his best whiskey to celebrate, and Martha prepared a feast worthy of the occasion. Amid the boisterous dinner, Dawson's eyes frequently found Olivia's across the table, his smile warming her from within. Later, as the hands drifted toward the bunkhouse and Harold retired early, claiming fatigue, Dawson followed Olivia onto the porch where she had gone to escape the lingering cigar smoke inside. "I missed you," he said simply, coming to stand beside her at the railing. "I missed you too," she replied, the admission easier than she'd expected. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge in the deepening twilight. "I had a lot of time to think, driving those cattle," Dawson said finally, "about what I want from life. About who I want to share it with." Olivia's pulse quickened, but she remained silent, waiting. "I know it hasn't been that long since you came here," he continued. "And I meant what I said about waiting, but I want to be clear about my intentions, Olivia. I'm in love with you. I want to court you properly if you'll allow it." She turned to face him fully, studying the earnest expression on his face. In the months she'd known him, he had shown her nothing but respect, kindness, and an understanding she'd never experienced before. He had given her space to heal, to find herself again after years of being diminished by cruelty. "Yes," she said softly, "I would like that." The joy that transformed his features took her breath away. He reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished. When she allowed him to take it, his touch was gentle, reverent. "May I call on you tomorrow evening?" he asked formally. "Perhaps a ride to the Cottonwood Grove," Olivia smiled, something tight in her chest finally releasing. "I'd like that very much." The courtship that followed was unlike anything Olivia could have imagined. Dawson was attentive without being possessive, affectionate without being demanding. He brought her wildflowers gathered during his rides around the property. Read aloud to her from books he ordered specially from Santa Fe, and truly listened when she spoke of her dreams and fears. Their rides to the Cottonwood Grove became a regular ritual, a private space where they could speak freely away from the well-meaning but watchful eyes at the ranch house. It was there, as spring gave way to early summer, that Dawson first kissed her. They had spread a blanket beneath the largest cottonwood, sharing a simple picnic Martha had packed for them. Their conversation had wandered comfortably from ranch business to Olivia's growing friendship with Clara Williams, to Harold's improving health under her care. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the play of light through the leaves overhead. When Olivia turned to comment on the beauty of it, she found Dawson watching her with such tenderness that the words died in her throat. "May I kiss you, Olivia?" he asked quietly. The question itself, the fact that he asked at all, moved her deeply. "Yes," she whispered. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to change her mind. His lips touched hers with gentle pressure, a question rather than a demand. Olivia closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel without fear for the first time in her life. When they broke apart, Dawson rested his forehead against hers, his breathing slightly uneven. "I've been wanting to do that for a very long time," he admitted. "I'm glad you finally did," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. His smile was like sunrise. "Does that mean I can do it again?" Her answer was to lean forward and press her lips to his, a tentative initiation that he met with controlled passion. This time when they parted, they were both breathless. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Dawson O'Malley," Olivia said, the words rising from a place of truth she could no longer deny. "I think I've been in love with you since I found you half frozen in the street," he replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Stubborn, proud, and stronger than anyone I've ever known." As summer ripened across the New Mexico landscape, so did their relationship. Dawson courted her with a patience and devotion that gradually dissolved her lingering fears. Harold watched their growing attachment with gruff approval, while Martha beamed like a mother hen with particularly satisfying chicks. In July, during the town's Independence Day celebration, Dawson formally introduced Olivia to the community not as the Diamond O's housekeeper, but as the woman he was courting. Some, like Clara Williams and her husband, welcomed her warmly. Others, including Mrs. Porter, sniffed disapprovingly at what they viewed as above-stairs/below-stairs impropriety. "Let them talk," Dawson said as they watched the fireworks display later that night, his arm around her waist in a public declaration of his intentions. "Their opinions don't matter to me." "Nor to me," Olivia replied, realizing it was true. The judgments that once would have crushed her now seemed petty and insignificant compared to the happiness she had found. It was a perfect summer evening, the air still warm from the day's heat, but tempered by a gentle breeze that carried the scent of sage and distant rain. Around them, the townspeople of Chisum Ranch oohed and awed at each colorful burst in the sky, but Olivia found her gaze drawn repeatedly to the man beside her. He must have felt her watching, for he looked down with a questioning smile. "Something on your mind?" "Just thinking how different my life is now from when I arrived," she said. "How different I am." "You were always this person," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "You just needed the space and safety to remember it." His understanding of her journey, of how she had been forced to hide her true self beneath layers of protective armor, moved her deeply. Here was a man who saw her, truly saw her, and loved what he found. As August's heat baked the landscape to dusty gold, Dawson took Olivia on a special ride one evening after the day's work was done. They followed a new trail, climbing a ridge she hadn't visited before. At the top, he helped her dismount and led her to a flat rock overlooking a panoramic view of the Diamond O. "This is breathtaking," she said, taking in the vast expanse of ranch land stretching toward distant mountains. "It's my favorite view of the place," he replied. "You can see everything from here: the house, the cottonwood grove, the north and south pastures, even the boundaries where we meet the neighboring ranches." As the setting sun painted the landscape in hues of gold and crimson, Dawson turned to face her fully. "Olivia," he began, his voice suddenly serious, "these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought something to my days I never expected to find." She smiled, reaching for his hand. "You've done the same for me." "Harold has been talking about retiring," he continued. "He wants me to take over the ranch entirely, not just as foreman but as owner. He has no children, and he's always treated me like a son." "That's wonderful," Olivia said, genuinely pleased for him. "You deserve it, Dawson. No one works harder or cares more about this place." "The thing is," he said, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, "I don't want it unless I can share it with you." Before she could fully process his words, he was kneeling before her, still holding her hand in his. "Olivia Reed, I love you with everything I am." I want to build a life with you, to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to see your strength and kindness shape this ranch and any children we might be blessed with." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a ring not ostentatious like the one Thomas had forced on her finger all those years ago, but a simple, elegant band of gold set with a small pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. Olivia's free hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. This moment, this choice, was everything her first marriage had not been. This was being seen, valued, cherished for exactly who she was. "Yes," she whispered, her voice strengthening as she repeated, "Yes, Dawson, I will marry you." His face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He rose to his feet and gathered her into his arms, lifting her off the ground in his exuberance before setting her down to kiss her with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret this decision," he vowed. "I already know I won't," she replied, raising her hand to study the ring catching the last rays of sunset. "You've shown me what love truly is, Dawson. Not possession or control, but partnership and respect." They rode back to the ranch house as twilight deepened into night, the stars emerging overhead like scattered diamonds. Martha and Harold were waiting on the porch, their expectant expressions making it clear they knew Dawson's plans for the evening. "Well?" Harold demanded gruffly as they approached. In answer, Olivia held out her hand, the ring catching the light from the house. Martha's delighted cry and Harold's booming laugh broke the evening's stillness. Within moments, they were surrounded by the elder pair's congratulations and embraces. "About time," Harold said, clapping Dawson on the shoulder with surprising strength for a man his age. "Been watching you moon over this girl for months." "Welcome to the family, my dear," Martha said, hugging Olivia tightly. "Though you've been family in my heart for some time already." The wedding was set for October, when the heat of summer would have yielded to autumn's more temperate days. Clara Williams immediately appointed herself wedding coordinator, taking Olivia under her wing with enthusiastic plans for a ceremony worthy of the occasion. "Nothing too elaborate," Olivia protested during one of their planning sessions at the Williams' comfortable home in town. "Nonsense," Clara replied, flipping through fabric samples. "This is the social event of the year for Chisum Ranch. Half the territory will want to attend when the Diamond O's heir marries." Olivia hadn't considered the public aspect of her marriage to Dawson. The idea of standing before a crowd, all eyes upon her, sent a flutter of anxiety through her chest. Clara, perceptive as always, noticed her discomfort. "Don't worry," she said gently. "Dawson won't let anyone or anything make the day difficult for you, and neither will I. We'll make it beautiful but intimate, I promise." True to her word, Clara helped create plans for a ceremony that balanced the social obligations of Dawson's position with Olivia's preference for simplicity. The wedding would take place at the ranch, with the reception to follow in the large barn, freshly whitewashed and decorated for the occasion. As the weeks passed, preparations consumed much of Olivia's time. She found herself embraced by a community she had once viewed with suspicion. The women of neighboring ranches and the town brought gifts and advice. The ranch hands constructed a sturdy new gazebo where the ceremony would take place. Even Mrs. Porter, perhaps sensing which way the wind was blowing socially, thought enough to offer stiffly worded congratulations when they met in town. Through it all, Dawson remained a steady, supportive presence. He took on extra work to free Harold from responsibilities, insisting that Olivia focus on the wedding rather than her usual duties. "Martha can manage without you for a few weeks," he said when she protested. "This is your time to enjoy." And to her surprise, she did enjoy it. The simple pleasure of choosing her wedding dress, ordered from Santa Fe with Clara's assistance, planning the flowers, wildflowers from the cottonwood grove, she insisted, and selecting music for the celebration filled her with a joy she had never expected to experience. One evening in late September, as she sat on the porch swing enjoying the cooler air that heralded autumn's approach, Dawson joined her with 2 envelopes in hand. "Special delivery from Santa Fe," he said, handing her one. She opened it to find a letter from a lawyer she didn't recognize, along with several legal documents. Scanning them in confusion, she looked up at Dawson questioningly. "It's about the house in St. Louis," he explained, settling beside her on the swing. "Your house." "Thomas's house," she corrected. "I ran before his brother could claim it. Actually, that's not accurate." Dawson tapped the legal papers. "I had a lawyer look into it. Thomas Reed's will left everything to you as his widow. His brother had no legal claim, despite what he might have told you or what you feared." Olivia stared at him, then back at the papers. "But I left. I abandoned the property." "Which doesn't negate your ownership," Dawson said. "The lawyer has been in contact with authorities in St. Louis. The house is still there, still legally yours. His brother apparently tried to claim it but couldn't produce any documentation to support his right to do so." "I don't understand," Olivia said slowly. "Why did you do this?" "Because it's yours by right," Dawson replied simply. "What Thomas Reed did to you was unforgivable, but the property he left that belongs to you. You can sell it, keep it as an investment, whatever you choose. But the choice should be yours, not taken from you by fear or ignorance of your rights." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. Once again, Dawson had found a way to restore something she had thought lost forever, not just material possession, but agency over her own life. "Thank you," she whispered, leaning against him as he put his arm around her shoulders. "You're going to be my wife," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "But you're also your own person, with your own history and rights. I never want you to feel you've traded one form of dependency for another." The second envelope, she soon learned, contained a deed transferring partial ownership of the Diamond O Ranch to her name, to be formalized upon their marriage. "I want us to be true partners," Dawson explained when she protested that it was unnecessary. "In every sense of the word." October arrived with crisp mornings and golden afternoons, the perfect backdrop for a wedding. On the day before the ceremony, guests began arriving from throughout the territory, ranchers and their families, business associates from as far away as Santa Fe, and even a delegation from the nearby Mescalero Apache Reservation, with whom the Diamond O maintained peaceful relations. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cool. Olivia woke early, watching the sun rise from her bedroom window, the last time she would sleep in this room as an unmarried woman. After tonight, she would share Dawson's larger quarters at the opposite end of the hall. Clara arrived shortly after breakfast, bringing with her a seamstress to make any last-minute adjustments to Olivia's dress. The next hours passed in a blur of activity as women filled the house, helping with preparations, bringing flowers, offering advice both practical and fanciful about married life. By mid-afternoon, Olivia stood in her room wearing the dress she and Clara had designed together, ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, elegant without being ostentatious. Her hair was arranged in a simple updo, adorned with small white flowers from the garden. A knock at the door revealed Harold, dressed in his Sunday best, leaning on a cane more for ceremony than necessity. "Ready, girl?" he asked gruffly, though his eyes were suspiciously bright as he took in her appearance. Promised Dawson I'd escort you properly, seeing as you've no father to do the job." Olivia smiled, touched by the gesture. "I'd be honored, Harold. You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "That boy downstairs is the luckiest man in the territory, and he knows it." With Harold at her side, Olivia descended the stairs and emerged onto the ranch's wide lawn where nearly 100 guests had gathered. At the far end, beneath the new gazebo decorated with autumn flowers and greenery, stood Dawson, handsome in a new black suit, his eyes finding hers immediately across the distance that separated them. The small orchestra, brought in from Santa Fe as Dawson's surprise gift to her, began to play. With steady steps, Olivia walked toward her future, Harold's arm solid beneath her hand. Each face she passed was smiling, every eye approving, but she saw only Dawson, watching her approach with undisguised love. When they reached the gazebo, Harold placed her hand in Dawson's with a gruff, "Take care of her, son," before taking his seat in the front row beside a teary-eyed Martha. "You're breathtaking," Dawson whispered as they turned to face the minister. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. They had written their own vows, promises of love and partnership that acknowledged both the pain of the past and the hope of their future together. When Dawson slipped the gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, his eyes never leaving hers. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Dawson's kiss was tender yet passionate, a perfect balance that spoke of his respect for the occasion and his deep feeling for her. When they turned to face their guests, now officially introduced as Mr. and Mrs. O'Malley, the applause was enthusiastic. The reception that followed was everything Clara had promised: elegant yet comfortable, formal yet filled with genuine warmth. The barn had been transformed with lanterns, flowers, and tables laden with food prepared by Martha and the women of neighboring ranches. Music and laughter filled the air as darkness fell and stars appeared overhead. During a moment of quiet between dances, Dawson led Olivia outside to a secluded corner of the garden. The sounds of the celebration continued behind them, but here they had a moment of privacy beneath the vast New Mexico sky. "Happy, Mrs. O'Malley?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "More than I ever imagined possible," she replied honestly, resting her hands on his chest. "If someone had told me a year ago that I would be here like this." "Life has a way of surprising us," he said, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "When I found you that day, I had no idea you would become the center of my world." "I was so broken then," she murmured, "so afraid." "Not broken," he corrected gently. "Wounded, perhaps, but never broken, Olivia. Your strength was always there, waiting for the chance to shine again." She reached up to touch his face, marveling at the journey that had brought her to this moment. "I love you, Dawson O'Malley. Thank you for showing me what love is supposed to be." His answer was a kiss that held all the promises of their future together: passion and tenderness, respect and desire, partnership and devotion. Epilogue: 5 years later, the spring dawn was just breaking over the Diamond O as Olivia stepped onto the porch, a cup of coffee warming her hands. Behind her in the house, she could hear Martha preparing breakfast, the clatter of pans a comforting backdrop to the morning stillness. 5 years had brought changes to the ranch. Harold had passed peacefully 2 winters ago, leaving the Diamond O entirely in Dawson and Olivia's capable hands. They had expanded the operation, adding more cattle and purchasing adjacent land when it became available. The ranch now employed twice as many hands and had a reputation throughout the territory for fair dealing and quality stock. But the most significant changes were personal. Olivia smiled as she heard the patter of small feet inside, followed by Dawson's deep voice and a child's delighted giggle. Moments later, the door opened and her husband emerged, their 3-year-old son Thomas perched on his shoulders and their 1-year-old daughter Elena in his arms. "Mama," Thomas called, reaching for her with eager hands. "Papa says we can ride to see the new calves today. After breakfast," Dawson reminded him, carefully transferring the boy to Olivia's waiting arms while balancing Elena securely against his chest. "And only if you eat all your oatmeal." Olivia pressed a kiss to Thomas's dark curls, so like his father's, before leaning in to allow Dawson a quick kiss of greeting. Elena, seeing this exchange, patted her father's face with a chubby hand, demanding her own share of attention. "Good morning, my love," Dawson said, his eyes holding the same warmth they had shown her from the beginning. 5 years of marriage had only deepened their bond, each challenge and joy they faced together strengthening the foundation they had built. Together, they watched the sun rise fully over their land, the home they had created not just in physical space, but in the love they shared with each other and their children. A home where kindness was not a rare gift but a daily practice, where strength was honored, and where the past's wounds had healed into wisdom rather than scars. "I was thinking," Dawson said as Thomas wiggled down to investigate a lizard on the porch step, "about expanding the main house. With the new baby coming in the fall, we'll need another bedroom." Olivia's hand instinctively went to her still flat stomach. At 31, she was expecting their 3rd child, a secret they had only shared with each other so far. "I'd like that," she agreed. "This house should grow with our family." Dawson smiled, shifting Elena to his hip so he could wrap his free arm around Olivia's waist. "I never imagined being this happy," he admitted. "Having you, the children, this life we've built together, sometimes I wake up thinking it must be a dream." "Not a dream," Olivia said, leaning into his embrace. "A life well earned and well lived." She looked out over the ranch at the land that had become home in every sense of the word. A life filled with kindness. As if understanding the significance of her words, Dawson's arm tightened around her. They stood together on the porch of their home, surrounded by the family they had created, watching the day begin across the land they loved, two people who had found in each other not just love, but the healing power of kindness freely given and gratefully received.